Session 8. Leadership in Groups. Introduction. Regardless of where you are employed, the work experience depends in large part on the quality of the leadership in the organization. A leader is someone who can move a group of people towards a common goal. He or she may be a head of state, the president of a college or university, the principal investigator of a research team, the executive officer of a corporation, or the manager of a sports team. This study session will try to highlight some of the traits of a leader. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to discuss leaders as influence agents and point out roles of leaders. Approaches to the study of leadership. The question of what factors make for effective leadership has intrigued psychologists, historians, and political scientists for some time. There is no single formula. Some leaders succeed by winning supporters, others by mending fences, uniting rivals, negotiating deals, building coalitions, solving problems, or stirring emotions. Whatever the strategy there is, one common denominator is that good leadership is all about social influence. Classic traits theory. One approach to the study of leadership is to identify the traits that categorize natural-born leaders who have the right stuff. The great person theory maintains that certain key personality traits make a person a good leader, regardless of the nature of the situation the leader faces. According to the great person theory of history, exceptional individuals rise up to determine the course of human events. This approach has had some support over the years, as certain traits such as ambition, intelligence, a need for power, self-confidence, a high energy level, and qualities of flexibility and adaptability are characteristics of people who go on to become leaders. Even physical height may play a role. Situational theories. In contrast to this approach, more situationally oriented theories were introduced based on the notion that the emergence of a given leader depends on time, place, and circumstances, that different situations call for different types of leaders. Thus, as the needs, expectations, and resources of a group change, so too will the person best suited to lead it. An alternative to the trait perspective, then, is a view that leadership is the product of the unique interaction between personal and situational factors. This view argues that leadership effectiveness depends both on how task-oriented or relationship-oriented the leader is, and on the amount of control and influence the leader has over the group. The first assumption of the theory is that there are two kinds of leaders: those who are task-oriented and those who are relationship-oriented. The task-oriented leader is concerned more with getting the job done than with the workers' feelings and relationships. For the relationship-oriented leader, workers' feelings and relationships are the primary concern. The crux of contingency theory is that neither type of leader is always more effective than the other. It depends on the situation, specifically on the amount of control and influence a leader has over the group. In other words, the amount of control that a leader has determines which type of leadership is more effective. Leaders exhibit high situational control when they have good relations with their staff, a position of power, and a clearly structured task. In contrast, leaders exhibit low situational control when they have poor relations with their staff, limited power, and a task that is not clearly defined. Task-oriented leaders are most effective in situations that are either very high or low in control. When situational control is very high, people are happy, everything is running smoothly, and there is no need to worry about people's feelings and relationships. The leader who pays attention to only the task will become the most accomplished. When situational control is very low, the task-oriented leader is best at taking charge, imposing some order on a confusing, ill-defined work environment. Relationship-oriented leaders, however, are most effective on situations that are moderate in control. Under these conditions, the wheels are turning fairly smoothly, but some attention to the squeaking caused by poor relationships and hot feelings is needed. The leader who can soothe such feelings will be most successful. The contingency theory of leadership has been tested with numerous groups of leaders, including a business manager, college administrators, military commanders, and postmasters. These studies have generally been supportive of Fielder's model. While this support is far from unanimous, the main point is taken. Group leadership requires a match between an individual's personal style and the demand of a specific situation. A mismatch, that is, the wrong type of person for the situation, can have negative consequences for both the leader and the organization. Contingency model of leadership. Several theories of leadership focus on the characteristics of the leader, the follower, and the situation. Many psychologists believe that effective leadership depends on the interaction of three factors: the trait of the leaders, the characteristics of the followers, and the nature of the situation in which leadership occurs. The best known theory of this type is the contingency theory of leadership. In this section, we shall examine theoretical explanations on the contingency model of leadership. In contingency theory developed by Fielder, 1978, leadership effectiveness is determined by the interaction of the leader's personal characteristics and aspects of the situation. Leaders are classified primarily as person-oriented or task-oriented. The type of leader who will be more effective depends on the leader's degree of control over the situation. Control is contingent upon three factors: the relationship between the leaders and the followers, the degree of task structure, and the leader's authority or position power. If leaders are popular and are directing a highly structured or routine task and have authority or power to enforce discipline, then they have a high degree of control over the situation. We may well describe this situation as favorable. For example, army sergeants who get along well with the soldiers in their squads have a high control and are thus effective leaders. On the other hand, an unpopular president of a social club that has no formal goals and who has no authority to require attendance or collect dues is a low control leader in an unfavorable situation. Scotts, 2002. In Fielder's contingency model, task-oriented leaders excel in high and low control situations. However, relations-oriented leaders are effective in moderate control situations. Proposed by John, according to the normative model, leaders proposed by Victor, Vroom, and Yeton, Philip, 1973, range from autocratic to participative. The key to good leadership is to invite the right amount of worker participation. Studies of military units, sports teams, schools, hospitals, and other organizations generally support Fielder's model. Good leadership requires a match between an individual's personal type and the demands of a specific situation. A mismatch, that is, the wrong type of person for the situation, can have negative consequences for both the leader and the organization. Although the ideal leader is one who adjusts his or her style to meet the situation, people generally prefer leaders who involve them in important decisions. Research has shown that participative decision-making boosts workers' morale, motivation, and productivity, and also reduces turnover and absenteeism rates. Leadership roles: transactional and transformational leaders. Transactional leaders. These motivate followers to transcend their personal needs in the interest of a common cause, particularly in times of growth, change, and crisis. Through consciousness raising and raw emotional aspiration, they articulate a clear vision for the future and then mobilize others to join in that vision. People are drawn like magnets to transactional leaders who have what it takes. Transactional leaders focus on the social transactions for exchanges between leaders and followers. The leader's freedom to act is constrained by the followers' perceptions of them. The key to this interaction is the followers' perceptions of and expectation about leaders' ability, competence, and source of authority. In other words, the behavior of transactional leaders depends on what their followers think of them. Transactional leaders conduct their business by identifying the needs of their followers and bestowing rewards to satisfy those needs in exchange for a certain level of high performance. Transformational leaders. Transformational leaders have more latitude in their behavior. They are not limited by their followers' perceptions. Rather than believing they must act in accordance with what their followers expect of them, transformational leaders work to change or transform their followers' needs and redirect their thinking. Transformational leaders challenge and inspire subordinates with a sense of purpose and excitement about what can be accomplished. These leaders create a vision of what the corporate culture can be and communicate it to their employees. Thereby, they stimulate them to develop their abilities while accepting feedback and suggestions. 3 components of transformational leadership have been identified by Hackett and Allen, 1995. These are charismatic leadership, the level of confidence and inspiration engendered by the leader. 2, individualized consideration, the amount of attention and support the leader shows to the followers. And 3, intellectual stimulation, the extent to which leaders persuade followers to think differently about how they perform their jobs. Studies of business executives, high-ranking military officers, and high-level administrators in governments and universities have found that Those described by their subordinates as transformational leaders were more effective on the job. Furthermore, they also had better relations with superiors and made greater contributions to organizational goals than did those described as transactional leaders. Often, transformational leaders display charismatic qualities of leadership. Charismatic leaders have broad knowledge of their field, a self-promoting personality, a high energy level, and a willingness to take risks and use unconventional strategies. They use their power effectively to serve others and inspire their trust. Charismatic leaders stimulate their followers to think independently and ask questions. They maintain open communication with subordinates and freely share recognition with them. They tend to generate high job performance and positive work attitudes among their followers. Study session summary. In this study session, we examine two major approaches to the study of leadership. These are trait theory and situational theory. Fielder's contingency model explains that good leadership requires a match between the individual's personal style and the demands of the specific situation. We cap the session with a discussion on transactional and transformational leaders. End of study session 8. Thank you for listening.